Search and rescue teams are retrieving wreckage and corpses off of the coast of the island of Borneo, Indonesia. Officials confirmed today that they are the remnants of AirAsia Flight 8501, which vanished from radar early Sunday. It disappeared halfway through a 2-hour flight from Indonesia to Singapore. 2 days later, rescuers have discovered debris and bodies about 10 miles from the plane's last known coordinates. Televised images of floating bodies have triggered a wave of anguish. Relatives of the victims gathered at the international airport in East Java, where they grieved and collectively shared pain. Rise News correspondent Shahan Ramkisoon joins us now with the very latest on this latest aviation tragedy. Shahan.
Well, that's right, Gary. Most of those families are still waiting at the airport for their loved ones' bodies to be recovered. The Indonesian president is vowing to do everything in his power to make sure everyone on board that flight is found.
Ya musahil alaina ya Allah.
Families of those on board the missing AirAsia plane praying for a miracle. But prayer turned to tears when news emerged on Tuesday that bodies were found. An expanded air and sea mission discovered debris in the Java Sea off the coast of Borneo. These distraught relatives will now have the heartbreaking task of identifying their loved ones. The search is far from over, though, as more than 100 others are still missing. All authorities can say is sorry.
I apologize profusely for what they're going through. I am the leader of this company and I have to take responsibility. That is why I'm here.
Seluruh keluarga penumpang.
I feel deep loss over this disaster and pray for the families to be given strength to face the disaster.
Now that rescue mission is continuing and searchers are recovering more and more bodies at this hour. Gary?
Thank you, Shahan. Well, it's believed the bulk of the aircraft is between 130 and 200 feet in water. For analysis on the recovery effort, we turn to Keith Mackey. He is president of the aviation consulting firm Mackey International. And now, Keith, everything is very early, very preliminary in this investigation, yet another air crash in 2014. But give us some of the telltale signs of what may have gone wrong here.
Well, we have a little bit of information. We know that the aircraft was at 32,000 feet, and they requested an altitude change. Now, normally this is done when you encounter turbulence. Apparently, they were not able to climb to 38,000 feet, and very possibly it was because there was conflicting traffic. In other words, other airplanes coming the other way. We also know that the location of the wreckage is about 6 miles from the last known position of the aircraft. And that would indicate that it descended from 32,000 feet to the surface in only 6 miles. And that, to me, indicates a very steep descent trajectory or indication that perhaps the aircraft may have broken up in flight. We really don't know which is correct or whether there's another option as well. But once we recover the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, we'll learn a lot more.
Now, you bring me to the next point, which is recovery of that flight data recorder. If the plane is in somewhere between 130 feet, 200 feet of water, it doesn't sound very deep when you hear it, but that is still a challenge, to say the least.
Well, it is a challenge, but there's certainly been much worse scenarios. It should be relatively easy to recover the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. They have little transmitters on board them called pingers, and every few seconds they send out a signal. And we have equipment that can track that and lead us right to the devices to be able to recover them. Now, once they're recovered, they need to be properly read and interpreted, and this will take some technical expertise. They need to be sent to a place that specializes in doing that sort of thing to be sure that we're getting accurate information. Once we get that information, the flight data recorder records probably about 100 streams of data from the airplane. We'll know the temperatures the engines are operating at, the exact altitude the airplane was at every instant, speed, everything, the position of the control surfaces. When we listen to the flight data recorder, we'll hear all the conversations that took place in the cockpit, between the cockpit and the cabin. Mm-hmm. And between the pilots and the ground. And
let me jump in right there. I mean, from all it indicates now, it seemed as if, with the exception of the deviation in the flight pattern, that nothing else seemed out of the ordinary, as similar to the disappearance of MH Flight 370. But it turned out that from the last time it was lost from radar and when it disappeared, apparently a lot of things happened because it hasn't been found to date. What can happen in that short period of time that may throw off investigators, or at least throw off investigators in time to figure out whether this was an accident or something more nefarious like a man-made detonation?
Well, they'll certainly be able to learn that once they recover the data recorders. So that, I think, will be known relatively quickly. Now, with MH370, I think there's more nefarious things going on there than we know. So I don't think we can compare the two. I think this is entirely an accident-related type thing. And to answer your question, the clues we have is we know there is bad weather in the area. Now, the Airbus A320 is perfectly capable of flying in bad weather and does so on a daily basis. So that may have been a factor, but there was probably also compounding factors. In other words, other things that happened, coupled with perhaps the weather situation that may have caused the accident. But there again, we're just speculating.
Keith, I studied aviation. I'm a licensed aviation mechanic. I have done this all my life, and I can't remember in modern aviation, let's going back to flight MH370, where a wreckage was mysteriously disappeared. Can you recall anything like that?
No, I must say you were wise. You got into broadcasting instead of saying in aviation. And I can't recall that. No, that's the only incident similar to that I know of.
Keith Mackey, president of Mackey International, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.